What is going on YouTube? This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the soundtrack to the movie Black Panther that came out in 2018. Basically, the soundtrack was curated by Kendrick Lamar and Top Dog Entertainment, and it came out in the winter of 2018. So about this particular product, this is basically like the follow-up album after Kendrick Lamar put out Damn in like the spring of 2017. But I would basically say this is damn near like a Kendrick album, considering that he at least has ad-libs or vocals of some sort doing the chorus or even verses on there for most of the project that this particularly is. This is kind of like a stopgap between Kendrick's long 5 year gap between Damn and then Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers from 2022. Now, the thing about it was, after Kendrick dropped this particular product in the winter of 2018, he did not come back until basically 2022 with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. So he took a pretty lengthy gap. He had a pretty good pitch. He had a pretty good run throughout the mid-late 2010s and basically the 2010s decade as a whole. The more I look after some of these type things, and go ahead and say this is a classic album. Now, I had heard bits and pieces of this particular product. I remember it was a big deal when the movie came out. There was like, this had a lot of good appeal. I saw the movie. Black Panther was a pretty solid movie. Black Panther was a pretty excellent movie. I remember a few songs. I definitely remember Instagram. It had this particular soundtrack score had Instagram buzz and pitches like that. So there's some good concepts as far as the appeal kind of behind it. Some songs like King's Dead and Pray for Me, I remember in particular. It was kind of a big deal throughout a good chunk of 2018 as far as those pitches kind of happened. It's unfortunate the Chadwick Boseman situation, the concept, not just his death, but the fact that these movies were not able to continue within the fold behind it just because this was like an impactful type movie. But it's kind of like what happened with Brandon Lee and The Crow back in 1993 with the Crow movie. It's just kind of the concept that I'm fairly certain that they probably would have continued more movies. There might have even been like a Crow 2 with Brandon Lee at some particular stage had he not passed in like early 93. But this is kind of the concept. This is the sort of situation that kind of happened. This is just like a one-shot particular project. Has a lot of glitzy type of appeal, and that was just the concept about it. Now, there was a sequel movie that came out, but I don't really know the context of that particular one, but it did have a soundtrack also with at least a Rihanna song on there. So I just would have to say, but this particular one was curated by Kendrick Lamar and Top Dog Entertainment. So it has folks like Ab Soul and Schoolboy Q and J Rock, some of those type folks on there. SZA's on there at least once. So I'd say there's some good appeals behind it. But I look after, yeah, classic album here. Just would have to say, pretty much like a recent kind of day classic. I'd have to say it's a new era classic just with an appeal. Originally, I was thinking I was going to give this album like an 8 or a 9 out of 10, but it turned out to wind up getting a classic score as far as those pitches can happen. It's just not. I look after the amount of songs I recommend on this product would be 12 out of 14. So I look within the range behind that. I think the concept of only not recommending 2 songs out of 14, considering that for the most part, I usually give albums about 3 songs before I say that it's not a 10 out of 10, but I look after it. I think the concept that 12 out of 14 might as well be like a 10 out of 10. So I look after it within that pitch. That's an excellent concept. Just round F run just has blistering kind of appeal. Just the impact behind a lot of these, just being able to say that this is really, there's plenty of good trap on here. It's very contemporary. Just pitches like that. Just feels like a standard Kendrick album, just with like a compilation type feel about it. Just a lot of good glitz. A lot of these artists bring their A game, and it just overall has the snap. This really has some ferocious bite about it that this is pretty feral to look after. A lot of these singles charted pretty heavily as well. Like on Spotify, All the Stars got to over 1 billion plays. King's Dead and Pray for Me were definitely pretty massive ones as well. I want to say all these songs were at least top 10 or top 15, top 20 on the Billboard 100 singles. I know at least Pray for Me hit like the top 10. I don't remember what King's Dead. I guess I could look that up. King's Dead. Well, I guess King's Dead didn't hit the top 20, but hit top. It was 21. Just looking after it, being able to say it was excellent appeal as far as that particular pitch kind of went. So I would have to say Kendrick is on all 3 of these singles in some pitch or the variation. But the thing about King's Dead is just the fact that it has a different. I remember purchasing that song digitally as far as those pitches kind of happen, but there's like some bonus things that were added to the end of King's Dead on the later album version. So it's an interesting pitch. It has a little bit more trap centric type feel towards the end of that particular type song. But yeah, I'll go ahead and talk about the singles here and then we'll get towards it. So All the Stars is the lead single. Now this is one that I don't remember as much. This was kind of one that I kind of figured. This is one I don't remember as much. But nowadays I kind of think I did hear this song on the radio. This was kind of one that's got a lot of glitzy appeal. Definitely this kind of gave Kendrick like his Lose Yourself type hit in terms of like this the soundtrack type of appeal, being able to nail movie soundtracks. It's a pretty good pitch. Kendrick and SZA were a pretty good combination to be able to do this particular type of appeal. It's had a lot of stardom about it, just overall This pizzazz. This is like a sprawling kind of Spotify era classic. I would definitely feel like good glamorous cruise out on like a spiffy night. I would definitely have to say, and it's like a good taste of some glitz here. So it's just big city, Las Vegas type of PL pitches like that. I'd have to say Miami Fried, some of those type pitches. It really has that trap glitz about it. It's pretty contemporary for the time. I'd have to say, definitely good impactful type ness. I look after it. I know that years later that there are some songs that do have a lot of glamour about it, but this still has a lot of pizzazz about it considering all the appeal behind it. This is definitely some good vehicle pizzazz and pitches like that. There are some ones on here like All the Stars. I feel like King's Dead's pretty good for that. I feel like Paramedic's pretty good for that. Ops is pretty good for that. X is pretty good for that. There's just some ones on here that do have a lot of that good trap funk. So it's just a good concept. For the most part, yeah, this is just an outstanding soundtrack. I can't think of like the last soundtrack apart from possibly like the Underworld soundtrack from the Underworld Rise of the Lycans soundtrack that I reviewed that I gave over like a 9 or 10 out of 10. I'd have to say it's a pretty good pitch. It's definitely one of the more this blistering type of build. It's really the impactfulness doesn't have like the kind of filler songs on here, which is a good, excellent pitch. King's Dead is the second single. This has Kendrick, J Rock, and Future on here, and a cat named James Blake. This would have to say. So this is like a Liddy kind of hype night pizzazz. I would feel like this is King's Dead is like a Liddy kind of hype night pizzazz with like a Gloomid kind of production. I would definitely feel like very just kind of doom, kind of murky type feel. This has like a nice snarl. I would definitely feel like about this song, lyrical smash. I would definitely have to say J Rock, Kendrick, and Future go in on this particular song. Now Kendrick doesn't drop a verse in like the standard edition of the song. He kind of has like the trap verse at the end of the song, but this is still a pretty good club splitter. I'd have to say it's pretty red hot type song kind of get here. The feralness of this particular song, this had a lot of ferocity. This is just a real nice one. This really up tempo, real paced type one to kind of get for like some good turn up and just really gets things started pretty quickly. Great kickstart, great one to just to say what time it is. Some pitches like that just really get to like the crunkness, just be able to really turn up. Pretty good vehicle pizzazz as well. Has less commercial bite, but I do overall like the appeal getting to some of this kind of more feralness. And then Pray For Me is the third single. This has The Weeknd on there and Kendrick. Both of them drop verses. It's like a pretty good concept of this one. It's like a foreign kind of glittery kind of club bounce about this particular song. Very melodic, haunting appeal about this particular one. It has some pretty good large commercial draw, I'd have to say, and it's a pretty contemporary type song kind of get. So I would look after just being able to say, I mean, this one, I feel like this particular song fits the theme of the movie more. This one just has more of like a tribal type feel. That's why I say it's more foreign. Just look after the tone behind it. Not quite as glitzy and more trap centric as like the songs like All the Stars and King's Dead. This one more fits the thematic type of appeal like the movie. Just if you've seen the movie as far as that particular pitch kind of goes, it's kind of more animalistic. It's kind of more tribal within that sense as far as it kind of goes. More feral, I'd have to say, but it is pretty good appeal behind it. You definitely appreciate the glitz of this particular song. The Weeknd really knocks out his verse on here, and Kendrick has a pretty good appeal. It's just more commercial aspected, but I definitely appreciate the melodies of how this song kind of went together and had its appeal behind it. So Kendrick really held down this project. I mean, Kendrick really held down this project. He hammers together this project pretty damn well. It just has the execution behind it. It's just an excellent type concept. I have to go ahead and say this might be one of Kendrick's overall best projects. I just look overall at the snap behind it. I mean, Damn was definitely pretty excellent. C4 was definitely pretty excellent. Good Kid, Mad City was definitely pretty excellent. I feel like that was kind of slight on singles, but to get to the third single on a movie soundtrack, in addition to having all these hitting songs where everyone delivers just within that pitch, is just an excellent type of feel. So this is a testament to just being able to say this should be kind of like back in the day when I said that Eminem set like the gold standard for greatest hits albums with Curtain Call. This is kind of one that sets the standard for like movie soundtracks, at least from recent day forward. Now, obviously, there are some ones that are classics in movie soundtracks, like the Lose Yourself sound or the 8 Mile soundtrack, and like the Murder Was the Case soundtrack by Snoop Dogg. Some of those type pitches. Trying to think of some rock ones here, and say like some of the Underworld soundtracks in terms of the rocks type fare. But I look after just some goodness to kind of get just within the aspect of it. So this just really gold standard nowadays for like what a movie soundtrack should have in terms of like the full blistering just star-studded quality. But yeah, I look after it. So out of 14 songs, like I was saying, out of 14 songs on here, I wound up recommending 12. So the only two songs I don't recommend in any fashion would just be Bloody Waters and then Redemption. So I look after it. Bloody Waters, I just didn't appreciate the more homely kind of makeshift in between type production. This one just didn't have as much spark or appeal towards it. I was expecting something that's trying to be like a more kind of makeshift pop rap type appeal, similar to like what Khalid does with some of his songs that he was doing in like 2019 with like his like similar to like what Khalid, the pop rap singer, was kind of doing in like the late 2010s as far as those pitches kind of happened. Just some good Starbucks and Target type music, but just didn't nail it nearly as well as far as that particular pitch kind of went. Just didn't have like the same kind of bite. I mean, I do feel like the song "The Ways" just definitely nailed that better. I feel like the aspect behind that. But these are, I feel like the artists on this particular song, Absol can kind of do more of like the J. Cole kind of thought provoking type vibe, and he normally pulls that off. And Anderson .Paak kind of has that particular appeal as well, but the song just didn't have like the sheer kind of full blown bite. I feel like it just it's the real work centric type one that just a real work centric type one that didn't have as much full blown pizzazz that I'd say. But I do feel like it's at least up that avenue if you want more songs like All the Stars, The Ways, some of those type ones, and just more morning brunch type fare as far as those pitches kind of happen. It is another one for that typeness, but I just look after it just didn't have as much pizzazz in my opinion. But look after Redemption was kind of one of those ones as well. Redemption was kind of like an up tempo kind of Justin Bieber esque type song. Kind of reminds me of something that he would have done unlike his 2015 album Purpose, one of those type ones like Sorry or What Do You Mean, some of those type pitches that just really feels like a breezy kind of just 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock p.m. type dredge that just got done with class of work, just more contemporary and like a pop rap type sense, but just didn't have as much glamour appeal towards it. But yeah, this album gets a 10 out of 10. Just would have to say 12 out of 14 is pretty sheer and blistering. So I'll go ahead and recommend some of these other type ones. I definitely feel like Seasons is a real standout here. There's like a haunting kind of glimmer, surprising doom type feel for like a reggaeton flavor, which is pretty good pitch. Just this would be a good concept to get some folks like Damian Marley and like Beanie Man doing this sort of pitch as far as that particular kind of goes. I feel like this is like some in between kind of malaise. I feel like this is some good in between kind of malaise here and preoccupied kind of slag to kind of get. So this is definitely one. There are some ones that kind of have like that 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock p.m. just got done with work shift type fare, just like the slag of like some relative kind of car converses within that pitch. Songs like Seasons kind of have that, and songs like I Am kind of have that, just some good pitch just for some of that. There's some brunch type music on here and some evening type music, good pitches kind of have for some of that work shift. So it does have that commercial bite about it. So speaking of I Am, this is a nice one here by Georgia Smith. It's like a makeshift kind of evening dredge with like a glazed kind of smoke one and get errands done type feel. Has a pretty edgy flavor. Definitely reminds me of like some emo rap, moody kind of emo rap, just in the pitch behind it. It's like some radio snap. I would definitely feel like about this song. It reminds me a lot of SZA, I'd have to say. So it's good enough pitch for that. It really has the appeal behind it. Kind of reminds me of SZA and Florence and the Machine, some of those type pitches, just that kind of drawling, kind of just overcast type R&B type pop rap type flavor, or just pop type appeal and pop rock type appeal. This really has the pitch behind it, really nails it. Kind of fits the theme of like the movie's kind of hauntingness. So some of these type ones do fit more of the theme of the movie. Some of these are just kind of more like trap in betweeners just to kind of get for like some standard night songs like King's Dead and X and Paramedic and some of those type ones, I'd have to say, and like ops, some of those type ones in particular. But there are some ones kind of like Pray for Me and I Am that kind of fit more like the theme of the movie, I'd have to say. Ops is a pretty highlighted one, as well as like a pounding kind of get raw turn up, I would have to say goes well with King's Dead. I would definitely feel like as like one of the most carnivorous on here. I'd have to say it has some heavy bass and it's like some good vehicle flash, and it's pretty red hot type song to kind of get. So look after some of these blistering type ones. Yeah, I realize that this is a PG-13 movie, but I'm glad that this particular album did not tone down or water down like the overall appeal. I feel like it has some commercial flavor, just looking after the aspects. Just a good aspect that it manages to do this, just not, I mean, it may not have as much full-blown songs for getting like super torn up and just kind of, being like getting super torn up and just pounding like 12 or 15 shots of liquor or something like that. But I look after the concept, it does have some pretty active social life just to be able to stunt and just vehicle possess. If you're old enough to have a vehicle, in most senses, you're probably old enough to get a little bit turned up a bit. Not so much liquor, but you get the idea that it has turn up for just folks past the driving age as far as those pitches kind of happen. Just look after it. So the Ways is a nice one as well. It's like a gusty kind of workaday kind of commerce standard. It's like a gusty kind of workaday commerce. I would feel like some standard bustle and commute. I would definitely have to say good blue collar type feel, and this is good for like some brunch traffic. So Khalid and Sway Lee definitely do an excellent job with this particular one. Just real pop rap type appeal about it. This probably could have been a single. I would have said this might have been like a late single. It actually wasn't, but it probably could have been a good choice to have been one if they had pushed this album further. Is what I have to say. I would probably say that the social score might get like a 10 out of 10 also. I would definitely have to say it just has some good appeal. Just to be able to say here. Redemption Interlude's another nice one. This kind of fits the theme of the movie as well. It's like an anguished and moody kind of interlude with like some venom. I would definitely have to say about this one. Definitely nails the standoffish taste that this particular song kind of gives, and this goes well with Seasons, I'd have to say. Good appeal behind that. Just some more ones that kind of have like a chip on your shoulder. If you just are not really in the mood, if you're just kind of not in the mood today, you got some responsibilities at work, some pitches like that you're not really trying to take care of. It's just a pretty good pitch, kind of has some of that. This has a little bit more anguish towards it. This typical type fare. It fits with some of the malaise and dredge like the particular movie. I'd have to say this a real moody type one. Also goes pretty well with I Am, I'd have to say. So there are some anguish type ones on here. Paramedic is a pretty red hot one. It's like a glaring kind of twisted, get tore up and heavy smoke one to kind of get here. It's definitely be a good one for some smoke. It's despite the fact that I said there's not a ton of these. This is at least one to kind of have some of that vintage kind of late 2010s song to kind of get. Definitely good for some homies outings and some dap fun. This is just like a good stunt type song with your buds and pitches like that. It's a good pizzazz. Just kind of dazzle the chicas, some pitches like that. Just being able to say some of those type of things as far as it kind of goes. There are some trap centric type ones on here. Just some standard circa Nestis to kind of get similar to Travis Scott, Migos, Future, some of those type folks that were popping 2017, 2018 as far as those pitches kind of happen with that. Good appeal. Kendrick helps out with some of these type songs on here. So he is at least on most of these. Even if he doesn't drop verses, I know there's enough folks that would probably want a verse from Kendrick on every one of these songs, but he does help out enough to say that he's not lazing around on this particular project. So it's a good concept. X is another highlight one that's like a scattered kind of vintage 2010s trap snarl. 2010s trap snarl, I'd have to say. Definitely reminds me once again of Migos, Travis Scott, some of those type folks. Some typical kind of vehicle pizzazz, I'd have to say. It's pretty good boiler. So these are just kind of like the 2010 Spotify era classics as far as those pitches kind of happen. These just slap. These particular songs just slap regularly. I'd have to say just some good vehicle pizzazz, some of that typeness just to be able to get for like some good turn up and just standard thump pitches like that. Just a raw type night. Despite the fact that this album is 6.5 years old, I still would have to say that a lot of this just has a lot of flavor. I'd have to say just the real concept of just being able to get towards some of these because I feel like for the most part the singles get a lot of play and appeal. I think you could probably still hear All the Stars and Pray for Me on the radio as far as that particular kind of happens. But I look after there are some ones more on here to kind of get within that. A lot of in between type joints, which not every single movie soundtrack has. So definitely shout out to some of these just for some of that stand out kind of trap music that just has a blistering appeal that really is some stuff that you could get tore up to just depending upon how it feels about it. Definitely have to say. And then Big Shot's kind of an interesting one. This is an interesting type pitch of a production fare. This has real like wind instrument type stuff. This feels like flutes or something like that. This feels very elven. This has like a particular elven feel about it, but it's pretty peppy trap flavor. I'd have to say about this one. Interesting song for Kendrick Lamar and Travis Scott. They both drop verses on here. It's like a pretty jovial kind of hangout song. I'd have to say, just a good one for your pals. Just not as much full blown get tore up, but just basically like some vanilla kickback, just standard like PlayStation music or sports game music, just football, basketball, some of that type stuff. PlayStation music, Max Payne, some of those type of ones that kind of get there. And this would just be like a good smoke heavy type song to kind of get. So I look after. I know I said that this could be a more healthy type hangout, but this would definitely just the overall kind of floaty and just overall peppy. It's this kind of giddy type of appeal just within this particular song. I just think this would be a real nice one to be high as hell to and just have some good smokage in your system. But it just has like that relative aspect, just the joviality behind it. Just real kind of almost benign afternoon where it just feels tomfoolery esque. I'd have to say just within the tone behind it. But I like the pitch behind it. So and then the song Black Panther is a pretty quality one. I don't think I've talked about this one. It's like a malaise kind of hungover daytime activity. I'd have to say it's like an in a funk kind of song to kind of get a preoccupied type. It's a preoccupied type feel like some of these other ones. Kind of has some shakeups in like the mid verse. It's kind of a pitch has like a kind of sobering, kind of somber type piano beat at the beginning and end of the song, but it kind of has some shakeups just for like some dismantlement. And this song is by Kendrick. Pretty good pitch how he handles that on there. This is a pretty solid bustler. Just be able to say to just snap to it and get towards it. Just like standard, not so much like a hustle song, but definitely like a good get up on your feet and get towards it type pitch as far as that particular kind of goes. Is kind of within the tone of the movie. This fits the theme of the movie somewhat as well. This fits the theme of the movie pretty well as well, I'd have to say. But yeah, I look after it. So I give this album a 10 out of 10 just within the pitch behind it. Has plenty of good appeals. Just really nails the theme of the movie. Has some of that anguish on here, just the malaise of just like some of those type of ness. It mixes that in with like the makeshift type dredge and just the overall standard task that's getting towards it and just kind of typical kind of paranoia, just dealing with things like ops and haters and pitches like that. Just some of those concepts that just like the tone behind it. Combine that with like some work shift relief and just songs for like evenings like I Am and Seasons and Redemption interlude, some of those type pitches with like some brunch time type fare, like Bloody Waters and The Way, some of those type pitches. I'd say a lot of this just has a lot of blistering feel. There's plenty of good trap centricness. So talk about the social score, I just would have to say I'll give the social score like a 10 out of 10 just because it nails the variety behind it. I mean, this is a very varietized project, very vibrant, just nails these particular angles. Has the morning brunch songs, the evening dredge songs, the trap songs on here for 2010s trap that's pretty trendy and contemporary. Great singles, contemporary bites, and great hooks on here. Some pitches like that, some great productions. Just overall has the concept behind it. It's a lot of good melodies. These artists bring their A game, and it just overall has the appeal that just nails it. So I just would say it has these bases covered, but a lot of these trap centric type ones just really have a lot of glitz and just you can get hammered to it, despite the fact that it can be it's for, like I said, it's not as full blown distinguished to getting as full blown torn up, but you definitely can. It's not like this is just PG-13 oriented. This kind of has the concept where it nails it to where teens can get fucked up, but then it's just within the concept that it also has the bite of just not being, you know, rambun, younger centric, I'd say. So it just nails it. But I look after the concept, so social score gets a 10. In terms of the future, like Black Panther, there was a second one called Wakanda Forever. There was a second Black Panther movie called Wakanda Forever that came out in 2022. This one's not curated by Kendrick, but it does, at least to my knowledge, have an exclusive Rihanna song, which she doesn't drop very oftenly at all nowadays, I'd have to say. So it's pretty dope pitch, kind of get that. But yeah, this is a classic album, impactful. Just did a lot of things right. Should pretty much set a gold standard for how the movie soundtrack should kind of be nowadays. There's just very minimal filler on here, and this is just blistering quality.